standing for our invocation by Deacon Lennox Toussaint.
Good afternoon. All powerful and ever.
God, we thank you for life. We thank you for bringing us here safely, and we pray that those who are on their way will also arrive safely. Heavenly Father, we're extremely proud that we were chosen, this little twin island republic, to be the creators of the only percussive instrument in the 20th century. Thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for those who have promoted this instrument throughout the world. Cliff, we are told that man is given 70 and 80 for those who are strong. Dr. Cliff went a little over that. He get a lanyard. Heavenly Father, we thank you for him, and we thank you for all his work that he's done for this steel pan. We pray that this organization, Pan Trinbago, under the leadership of Beverly, will continue to make strides in the promoting of this steel orchestra. And we pray, dear God, for all those who made it possible for today's event. When this event is over, we ask you to take us safely to our respective destinations. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, Deacon Lennox Toussaint. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of Pan Trinbago, the world governing body for Pan, I say a very, very warm welcome to each and every one of you here. This afternoon, we are going to pay tribute. We're going to remember Dr. Clifford Alexis. But more importantly, we are going to celebrate his life and his legacy. So we are very happy that you are here with us this afternoon on this very auspicious occasion. I am Gemma Jordan, and it is my privilege to be your hostess for this afternoon's program. And now to give you some official words of welcome, it is with pleasure that I invite to the microphone the historic making first female president of Pan Trinbago. This is Mrs. Beverly Ramsey Moore. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and warmly welcome our female president, Mrs. Ramsey Moore.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, Ms. Gemma Jordan. Let me recognize the members of the Central Executive of Pan Trinbago. Let me also recognize Ms. Yoko Asada Alexis, the wife of Dr. Clifford Alexis. Please stand and be recognized. And also his daughter. Please stand and be recognized. Clifford's daughter. Deacon Toussaint. I also recognize Professor Clement Imbe, acting chair of UTT. Mr. Nestor Sullivan, no stranger to the steel pan world. Mr. Cian Gomez, senior lecturer at UTT. I also recognize Dr. Mia Gomandi Benjamin, assistant professor at UTT. Mr. Marcus Ash, our education officer. Please stand and let them see our youthful education officer for those who don't know you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, steel band lovers, steel pan enthusiasts. Today, we are here to honor and remember our deceased loved one, Dr. Clifford Alexis. It is indeed a pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this memorial, this celebration of life, as we pay tribute to a life well lived and worth remembering. Cliff Alexis was a dear friend of Pantrinbago. And as I say, a dear friend of Pantrinbago, I want to thank all the members and staff of the Steel Pan fraternity. And I see that we have some of the former executive members of Pantrinbago. I see Mr. Richard Forto. And for all those leaders who would have welcomed and appreciate the work of Dr. Alexis, who was, as I said, a dear friend, a great man, a man who represented quality and innovation for the steel pan builders, the tuners, the educators, the performers, the composers, the arrangers. Clifford Alexis would have done his part here for all of us. And when I talk about him, I remember two very important persons, one deceased and one still alive. I remember the late George Goddard. In 1964, he provided an opportunity for some young men in Trinidad and Tobago who were at the time members of the Steelman Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And the 22 young men were selected. I raise it because George was the president of that association. And as I read, an opportunity was provided to Mr. Goddard to attend a conference in Minnesota, USA. And George Goddard indicated to them that I have something better for you. I have Steelman Men of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to offer that to you. Instead of taking it for himself to attend, he offered the Steel Orchestra from Trinidad and Tobago to attend. And Cliff Alexis was one of the 44, the 22 that they wanted. He was one of them who was chosen to be a part of the team representing Trinidad and Tobago in 1964. That opened the door for him because as I read his story, it said that he decided that he is not staying in Trinidad and Tobago. He said, I want to be an ambassador of PAN. I want to share this God-given gift that God has given to us in Trinidad and Tobago. And so Clifford Alexis went back the following year to the United States of America, where his journey in life would have left an indelible mark in terms of steel pan in the world. And we want to say thank you for that gesture by George Goddard, who would have opened up a way for those 22 young men. The other person who is alive, who was also a president of Pantrinbago, that I too want to remember and to say thank you to, is Mr. Patrick Arnold, who was a very close friend of Mr. Goddard. And according to Dr. Janine Remey, and according to her readings, Patrick Arnold is the one who told Dr. Alexis, don't harass me, make your own pans. Don't call me, you're calling me too much. Make your own pans. And Patrick Arnold inspired him. And so those two gentlemen played a role. They impacted, they inspired. And so too now, we have to inspire our youth in the community. We too have to inspire, because there is so much that you can get out of the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago. He has shown us the way, and that is why we are here today. The best kept secret, Dr. Cliff Alexis, the best kept secret. And we will learn today from the various speakers how he was or is the best kept secret. So this afternoon, we are all here. I welcome you. I welcome you because this is a very significant occasion. In Tobago, this Heritage Festival time, we'd say, is an auspicious occasion. And I want all of you, as we leave here today, we will be edified. May God bless you. May we continue to seek prosperity in Pan. As we launch our Steel Band Month this August, Pan Trinbago, it's Steel Band Month. We have a lot of events coming up. You listen out. And so we have launched it today by paying tribute, by remembering a dear friend of Pan, Dr. Cliff Alexis. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Beverly Ramsey Moore, the president of Pan Trinbago, and we can hear the passion in your voice as you spoke about those who have left an indelible mark on all of us here through the promotion of our national instrument. And we wish you and your executive all the best. And now, ladies and gentlemen, in Trinidad and Tobago, there is no way we can talk about the steel pan without calling the name of our next speaker. Please put your hands together and warmly welcome the acting chair of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Clement Ember, to give us some greetings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was really a very surprising introduction. I thought she was going to say Nestor Sullivan or somebody like that. But anyway, thank you. Thank you. At this age, I'm taking anything. I thought I was going to speak first to welcome you to UTT, because normally the protocol is that the order of speakers goes in ascending order of importance. So you have your lower people speaking first, and then the higher people speaking last. You know, if you have a minister or something, they have to speak last. Not that ministers are so important, but they think so, so we allow them to think so. It's not easy to speak after the president of Pan Trinbago, but I was called upon to speak, and I can't very well say, well, good afternoon, and sit down. So, my salutations. President of Pan Trinbago, Beverly Ramsey Moore, the Secretary, Denise Hernandez. Maybe I should have called Yuko Asada first. Yuko Asada Alexis, my lady. I'm kind of leaving the best for last, kind of thing. And Masaya Alexis, his daughter. We are happy to have you here. And whoever else may be very close or family to Cliff. I won't call him Dr. Alexis, I knew him as Cliff. Actually, it's an honor for me to bring greetings from UTT on a memorial such as this, solemn but yet auspicious occasion for a maestro, a patriot, and as a president of Pan Trinbago said, an ambassador for Trinidad and Tobago. I first met Cliff about 20 years ago in Trinidad, and he told me where he was, and I said, yes, I've heard of this place. People like, I'm from UE, as you know, I'm from UGT also, I'm from all over the place. So I said, yes, this is where people, I believe, like Harold Headley, Sat Sharma, Janine Remy, from UE had gone. And of course, later on we had people like Mia Gormandy, who is looking so lovely in the front there. I almost didn't recognize her with the lights in my eyes. But you look lovely today, lady. Thank you very much. Compliments to Mr. Benjamin. So Mia and people like Sion Gomez, Leith, these people are graduates. They are products, so to speak, of Cliff Alexis. And there are others, of course. There's a Manette name. The Manette name, of course, we know is very famous. And there was Ellie and Birdie, of course. where Cliff said, in fact, in one of the articles I read, that that is where he got his real true education in Pan, with people like Zephyrin and Kobo Jack and these sort of people that he was hanging about with, and of course the Manette brothers, Ellie and oh, Mr. Richard Forto, you are here somewhere, yes? Where are you? You're way down in the back. I heard they call your name. That was nice. That was nice that the current executive called the past executive name. I know you all always have your all kind of business, you know, but that was nice. Nice to see you, Richard. We have always had a good relationship. So, so I met Cliff in Trinidad here, and he told me where he was, and I told him, yes, I've heard of this place, and so on. And not long after, maybe a few years later, I was in Chicago at a welding and conference and exhibition, and I took a day I took a train to go up to DeKalb. I think it was a train because it was about 17, 18 years ago. Yeah, I think it's a train. Went up to DeKalb, it was about 2.5 hours or something like that away, and spent the day there. And I met a fellow called Rossing. I had not known about Rossing. I don't know how come, because he had written a lot about acoustics, particularly the acoustics of musical instruments. And I met this guy, and he invited me to come. So coincidentally, 2 years later, I had another conference in Chicago at McCormick Place, a big exhibition hall in Chicago. And I decided to leave a few days after the conference, and I spent 3 days up at DeKalb at NIU, because Rossing wanted me to see his lab and the work that he had been doing, which included some analysis of Cliff Alexis's pan, and some pans that he got from Ellie Manette also. So I spent a whole day at Cliff's workshop, and she may not remember, but I saw this young Japanese lady sinking a pan. It was one of the smoothest pans I have ever saw in my life, and I thought it was some grand machine, but Cliff told me, no, she's the lady who sunk the pan. I remember I'd visited Ellie Manette in 1999, I think it was the first time I visited him. And I saw a young lady there sinking a pan. It was the second time I was so impressed with how smooth these women seem to be able to sink the pans. Her name is Emily Lehman. She's now an established tuner. She was a young sort of sinker in those days, 20 years ago. And so is Yoko now, an accomplished tuner, so congratulations. And there are many others from Trinidad and Tobago. There was a Subiru, Sophia Subiru, I was reminded is her first name, who are Trinidadians who studied at NIU under Cliff. If we trace Cliff's journey in America, when he first went out in 1964 with the National Steel Band of Trinidad and Tobago, and then decided that this was a place that he could make his living as a musician, and went back in 65, played with the BWI Sunjet in New York, then went to Expo in 67, and the agent of Liberace there saw him, and he formed a band, the Cliff Alexis Trinidad Troubadours, and toured for 5 years. And then somebody in Minnesota latched on to him, and he started to find his true calling, he said, because there was a teacher inside of him that was wanting to come out, and Cliff was able to impart his knowledge of composing and playing and arranging in Minnesota for a number of years, until he was invited to come to see what NIU was doing by the musical director. He went, he liked the place, and of course, as I say, the rest is history. So from 1985 on, he spent 31 years there as a sort of co-musical director. Of course, the tuner and arranger and so on of the famous NIU steel band program up there. So it is, I was chatting with the president And we were saying that it probably, there's Sat Sharma. Yes, Sat, thanks for coming. She was saying that it probably would have been more appropriate to have this in a panyard. Well, I don't disagree, but I say the second most appropriate place is a university. Because Cliff, as he had said on more than one occasion, he really found his true calling in a university where he could teach people all that he had learnt over all those years in Trinidad, all over the states where he was, in Minnesota where he was for 12 years or so. And although he spent the majority of his life in the United States, Chris was a true Trini. Again, I'll repeat the word, he was a true ambassador of Trinidad and Tobago. So that when he went to live in the States in 1965, having taught there in 1964 with the National Steel Band of Trinidad and Tobago, he continued his ambassadorial duties and represented Trinidad well, spreading the word, spreading the gospel of Pan, proselytizing, if you wish. I hope you don't mind me using that word, deacon, proselytizing the Pan in the United States with almost religious fervor. That's why I use that word, sir. So, again, happy to see so many of you here. I will say again, as a distinct honor for me to have been asked to bring greetings from UTT. So, Madam Chair, when you're giving the vote of thanks, you can bring me up again, if you like, because as I say, at this age, I'm taking anything that I get. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Clem Ember, for giving us such a great insight into the life of Dr. Clifford Alexis. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have some entertainment. The National Steel Symphony Orchestra. It was formed in 2007 and is administered by the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. It is made up of musicians who represent the best combination of technique and literacy among steel band players in Trinidad and Tobago. And it has a vast and diverse repertoire, which includes original works arranged for steel ensemble. And of course, we have the artistic director, Mr. Akua Leith, and he is a Fulbright Fellow who graduated from the University of the West Indies with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Musical Arts, as well as Northern Illinois University with a Masters of Music in Conducting with an emphasis on steel pan performance. We have now, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to give us one composed by the late Dr. Clifford Alexis, appropriately named Love It. And we hope that this is exactly what you will do with the performance by the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, Love It. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our national steel band. Love it. Composed by Dr. Clifford Alexis. And ladies and gentlemen, it is really an honor when we have in our midst, we call him the ace pianist, the local Mozart, prolific composer and arranger, Mr. Len Boogsy Sharp. There's Mr. Boogsy Sharp. Thank you for coming. And for those of you who are here and you have your friends and family at home and abroad, please let them know that we are streaming live on WAC 90.1 FM, on TTT, on YouTube, and also Pantron Bagel Facebook. So those who were unable to be here can still be part of this afternoon's celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. Clifford Alexis. You know, Professor Imbert and Mrs. Beverly Ramsey Moore gave us an insight of Dr. Clifford Alexis's life as an adult. But we are privileged now to have someone who would have known him from the day she was born. So she's able to give us an insight from the perspective of a daughter of her father, who I'm sure was a loving father. So let's warmly welcome now to tell us all about the early life of Dr. Clifford Alexis, his dear daughter, Miss Masaya Alexis. Please welcome her to the microphone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and all of our distinguished guests. And I would also like to say that all protocols are observed. Thank you. Yes, so Cliff Alexis, thinking of Cliff Alexis for me is always just simply memories of my daddy. You know, as much as I know that he is everything that he has been acknowledged as my dad, he was very gentle and very protective. But he also had a sternness in his tone when he was speaking regarding discipline and our studies. For myself and my brothers, unfortunately, they weren't able to make it, so they sent the sister to represent for everybody. I remember about 5 years old when we were in New York, in Brooklyn, and I went into the room to wake him up one morning, and as a 5-year-old would do, you jump on the bed, right? Wake up, daddy, wake up, daddy. Well, the bed collapsed. Okay? So me, of course, I fell into tears. But all my daddy did was he picked me up, he kissed me on my forehead, he sat me on the dresser in the bedroom, and he fixed the bed. So as a 5-year-old, amazing to me, my superhero, and always my superhero. We moved to Minnesota. So big change, leaving from New York, from Brooklyn, of course, and not as many brown people around to see and share with. So that was a big change for all of us. But I remember we were riding the school bus, my younger brother and I, Cliff. We were riding the school bus, and some of the kids decided they wanted to bully us. So when we got home, we told my dad. And for the next 2 weeks, my dad dropped us and he picked us up from school every day. And he would wait. He would come early and we would see him and he would wait so he could get us and gather us and put us in the car. So after about that 2 weeks was over, he decided it was okay for us to get back on the school bus. You know, that was part of the learning. And but I tell you, that kid that was bullying with us never spoke to us again. I don't know what happened, but he never spoke to us again. You know, my teens growing up, my biggest memory with my dad, my teens growing up was him having the pitch pipe in his hand, always the pitch pipe, just tuning, you know, getting his notes right and things like that, and all the different hammers that he had in his bag of tools, the ball peen hammer, the sledgehammer, the the calluses that were always on his hands when I would talk to him and touch him. But that was my dad, his beard. Whenever I would go and kiss him, he would rub his beard on my face. My dad was just very gentle, loved to tell stories. Everybody knows that. Anybody that knows Cliff Alexis, he tells a story. But all of his stories had a lesson. The lessons for myself and for my brothers, of course, different than the lessons that many of his students learned, many different stories than he talked about with his students. But at the end of the day, they had the Cliff Alexis nuances, as he would hum his tunes, and there were music and songs that were familiar because he liked to stay current now. He always liked the current music, but he also mixed in the classicals. And again, with his own special style and nuances. I know sometimes we would come home and he would be cooking the pilau, and I knew his pot. I can still see the special pot. It was one pot only for the pilau, And in the center was the brown from the sugar, just that one pot with the cover for the cooking and everything. And it was good. It was good times. The measurements, as I would say, or the proportions were perfect, but never measured. And I think my dad was very much like that with his music. Perfect proportions, but never specifically measured. So as an adult, I went on for my profession. I ended up serving in the U.S. military. I retired 1 year ago after 35 years of service. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to travel as much with my dad as I would have liked to. So the sad part is, when he passed, this next trip, me coming here now, should have been with my dad. I should have been able to meet everyone and socialize with him by my side. But I'm so thankful for everyone who has taken the time to be here, to put this together, to think so much of him, to allow me the opportunity to share this moment. So, as I said, he's known as, of course, a pan man, the tuner, the arranger, the educator. But at the end of the day, he's simply always my daddy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Masaya. And we are happy that you're here with us and you were able to give us the information how your dad, very loving, very gentle, soothe, as a parent, if you fell and you got a cut, all mom or dad had to do was kiss it and the pain just magically disappeared. So my dear, hold on to the fond memories of your dad, and all of us are here supporting you, okay? And as we said, Dr. Clifford Alexis left here in 1964 as a member of the National Steel Band of Trinidad and Tobago. And now I invite my dear friend, who is a founding member of one of our steel orchestras in Trinidad, the Panbury Steel Orchestra, and he is going to give us an insight into life in the National Steel Band. Ladies and gentlemen, let's warmly welcome Mr. Nestor Sullivan.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now, I did some research to be able to deal with this topic properly. There's a book written by Myrna Graves, I think is her name. There I got some of this information, okay? Mr. Alexis was born in Port of Spain, East Port of Spain. He started to play pan at the age of 14 or 15 in the 1950s, right? In a band called Hit Paraders. He went into Tripoli and then Stereophonics. This overlapped with his involvement with Invaders. Stereophonics gave him his first chance at arranging, which continued with Invaders. Emmanuel Riley, also known as Kobo Jack, approached Cliff after a carnival He said the men wanted him to arrange for them. He agreed. Now, the National Steel Band, the arrangement with the National Steel Band was each band had to send either the arranger or the best player. Riley was Invader's choice, so Stereophonics suggested that Cliff represent them, even though at the time he was a member of Invaders. His membership in the National Steel Band changed his life. Goddard was the president of NATS, National Association of Trinidad and Tobago Steel Band Men, right? And Eric Williams provided the instruments for the band. He was the prime minister, of course. The band was not like today. The players are paid a salary monthly, but in those days they didn't have nothing to get, right? The first major venture of this National Steel Band was a trip to the United States in 1964. 22 players were selected. The trip was under the auspices of the Moral Rearmament, which was an organization, and they had a conference in Michigan. One of the people who is from that organization is a guy called Conrad Hunt. He was an opening batsman for the West Indies cricket team. Those of us who would have been around that time would know Conrad Hunt, right? They went to, Goddard was invited, initially Goddard was invited to give a lecture in this place in Michigan. He responded, "Why only me? I have a band that can do a better job." That was Goddard's response. And an invitation was eventually sent for the National Steel Band, and they went up. The conference included hundreds of delegates from countries all over the world. So when they played to almost the entire world. I'm quoting from a book that I got this information from. The Native Americans at the conference invited the band to visit New Mexico. First experience with these people from Santa Fe and Albuquerque. The visit to New Mexico was for 1 week and coincided with their fiesta. So these are, one of the things he observed is that the members of the band now, they were accustomed to knowing Native Americans from the television or the cinema screens. They didn't have much television, right? And you know them with Buonaro attacking the white people. So when they reached and they met these people hands-on, it was a real experience for them. They realized they were real people. I mean, with real feelings and good vibes. And they liked band too. The Native Americans at the conference invited the band to visit New Mexico, right? The visit made them realize that these Native Americans were normal people. Cliff was so impressed, he wanted to stay there. After leaving New Mexico, the band went to St. Louis, Missouri. They went to West Virginia and Louisville, Kentucky after. At one destination, the Beatles were there, and the National Steel Orchestra played "I Want to Hold Your Hand." I can't sing, else I'd allow a few words for that, right? Right? Now the Beatles, what's interesting with this Beatles, I'm drifting a little bit now, right? When this group was formed, when they started in England, there was a guy from Trinidad, right? His name is Harold Adolphus Phillip. His Calypsonian name was Lord Woodbine. He traveled, he was in the war on the side of the British, right? And he came back in 46, 47. In 1948, he was on the Windrush with Kitchener and all them guys. But when they landed in London, he didn't stay in London. Woodbine went to Liverpool. He was also a pan tuner, and he could have played guitar. He was very talented. And he worked in a club then. And two young guys, one named John Lennon, the other named Paul McCartney, they came around him. He introduced them to steel band. He encouraged them to do work, to perform in the club. And they got a group together. They used to call them Woodbine Boys. Woodbine, that was his name, his calypso name, Woodbine Boys. And the first, he encouraged them to develop the group, right? The first tour that group made as the Beatles, 1960, they went to Hamburg. Woodbine took them there. Okay, he rented a vehicle, and when they performed, he performed and then brought them on. Okay, that's just about the Beatles, right? That's on the side. On the whole, now they say when the audiences were crazy, positive response to the performances. The audiences went crazy. There was a positive response to the National Steel Band, right? That's in when they meet the Beatles now. On the whole, traveling with the National Steel Orchestra in 1964, very, very excellent treatment was meted out to them. Almost king-like. Almost king-like in nature. The responses from the audiences were with great enthusiasm. This treatment made him want to return to America because Trinidad and Tobago was not responding like that. They also visited a place called Trinidad in Colorado. All you know that place, right? This is the first time I know it have a next place named Trinidad. Right? And on our Independence Night in August 1964, its mayor, the mayor of that place in Colorado, closed down the main intersection for the band to play right in the middle of town. Eventually, a lot of guys wanted to return home, right, to Trinidad and Tobago. A few of us wanted to stay. Us meaning, I'm talking here as this brother on the thing, Mr. Alexis. The visa allowed him entry into the USA, and he went to Brooklyn in 1965. Panning clubs, he would get work. That's what he thought, eh? He said when he go back in 65, he will get work. But it was a different reality. In 65, Rudy King helped him a lot also. Ellie, Kelvin Hart, Junior Puchette, Hugh Bord, and Vincent Hernandez. Tripoli and Liberace in 67, he went to a show in New Jersey, right? Cliff returned to Trinidad in 67, and he went back up back in Trinidad to work with his band, right? He went throughout the U.S. performing, Las Vegas, Reno, Lake Tahoe, Hollywood, etc., etc. Because he was on the road, he neglected his family life, right? All right. But that's normal. I'm sure there are plenty of people inside here who guilty also. I could talk for myself. He worked at the Performing Arts Center in Minnesota for 12 years, teaching youths to play pan. He started tuning around 1971. From 1971 to 1974, he started tuning. The institution wanted pans made, so he brought Patrick Arnold. Somebody mentioned Patrick just now, right? He brought Patrick Arnold. And that's when, I suppose he maybe didn't like how Patrick Pan was singing, so he decided he would learn to tune for himself. Don't tell Patrick I say that, eh? All right. Okay. Then afterwards, enter Al O'Connor, who Cliff was tuning for the U.S. Navy, and they told O'Connor about Cliff, right? And he started, Al O'Connor was at the university, North Illinois University, and Cliff was eventually employed there in around 1985, and he was teaching there, and that was a professional approach to his life, right? So, there are plenty of things to talk about Cliff. I spoke to Ray Holman, and Ray was very positive about the contribution Cliff Alexis and the influence Cliff had on his development as a steel band musician and that type of thing. So it have a long story to tell about this man. And I am just here to talk about his involvement in the National Steel Orchestra. I'm happy to be able to do this, and I hope that people in Trinidad and Tobago would recognize this man and the value of his contribution to the development of the global steel band music, especially in the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nestor Sullivan, for giving us some information about life in the National Steel Band. And as we continue now, we're going to get some more information, life at St. Paul Public School. And to tell us all about that is Mr. Sion Gomez. He's one of the proteges of Dr. Clifford Alexis, and he's now a senior lecturer at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So let's warmly welcome Mr. Sion Gomez.
Good afternoon. Yes, I got it. All protocols observed. Cliff, as we know him. The best kept secret in Pan, as we refer to him. Cliff was an intellect. He was a man with vision. He was a charmer. He always knew he wanted better for himself. So at different points of his life, he made sacrifices that would eventually direct him to where he wanted to be. Some of us may not have understood his actions at the time, but now we can say, well, hey, this guy, he was seeing where he wanted to go. All right? According to Masaya, Cliff was a storyteller. I sat in that office every day. And every day, you might get the same story, you know. But you will get a little different aspect of the story every time. So, everything that happened around his life, I probably knew in story. So when you read it in books and you hear people talking about it, I heard it from Cliff. And Cliff would normally say, when he spoke about his time in New York, it was funny, but very serious. He spoke about all the performances that he did. He spoke about the jobs that he didn't get and the hard times that he had. So when that time came in 1972, I think it is, he told himself he needed a change. He needed more from Pan, for Pan. He needed more for himself, for his family. So he decided to move from New York, and he went to Minnesota, where his then wife had some family, and more importantly, there was no Pan around. So he could reign. He could reign. It's at this point I would call this period the beginning of the Cliff Alexis legacy. Because this is where he started his journey, really, into the education and the academics. So at this point, at this period in time, the American education system was really into multiculturalism. And he kept that in mind. So he went and applied for a job at the St. Paul's Central High School. So after the interview, I remember sitting and listening to him give this story. After the interview, they told him, okay, we'll call you, you'll hear from us in a couple of weeks. And if you know Cliff Alexis, sitting and waiting a couple of weeks ain't cutting it. So Cliff went and applied to another school in the area. Did the interview? And they too told him, you will hear from us in a couple of weeks. So he had no choice at this time to sit and wait for somebody to call. So he's sitting and waiting, 2 weeks or into 3 weeks, 3 weeks or into a month. And he was like, nah. So he goes back to St. Paul. And in true Cliff style, he said, listen, I came and I did an interview here. You all told me you'll call me when you're ready. But while I was waiting, the school down the road called me for a job. So I really want to be here. So I suggest you all hurry up and confirm the position. The following week, Cliff was in St. Paul's. Cliff really secured that job. And he knew he had to make a mark. But he realized then that he had no resources to work with. The school had no money, no instruments, nothing. And at this point, he realized, well, hey, I have to find drums, I have to get them made, I have to get them tuned, I have to arrange music. Things that he really wasn't thinking about when he applied for the job. So he turned to his old friend, Mr. Patrick Arnold, who did make the instruments, the first set of instruments for him. But he also took Cliff on as an apprentice, teaching him the processes of making the steel pan, tuning the pan. Again, knowing Cliff, he didn't stop there. Yes. So Mr. Arnold did make the first set of instruments for St. Paul's School. And taking on Cliff as his apprentice, teaching him how to make the instruments, Cliff took that information, didn't stop there. Cliff went and he did an advanced class in music and acoustics. He took a 12-week course in piano tuning at the University of Minnesota. He read books on instrument tuning. He consulted with various marimba and organ tuners. He even went to a harp convention. All of this just to make sure he understands the nature of tuning and to be able to do this job that St. Paul's hired him to do and do it well. So at St. Paul's, Cliff taught many inner city kids the steel pan as part of a curricular school music program. He taught beginners, intermediate, and advanced steel bands 5 days a week. He really cared deeply for his students and was involved in mentoring several gifted individuals, including a group of students who formed a nationally successful R&B band called Mint Condition. A couple months ago, I did make a call and spoke with Mr. Stokely Williams, who would have been the leader of that group at the time. And he really wanted to be here, but you know those guys, their schedules are really busy. But one thing he did say, he said, Cliff's support, his motivation, and his guidance was the reason for their success in their personal lives and the group. They really depended on Cliff. So here we have Cliff in his very simple state doing wonders for large audiences and large groups, at the same time. Cliff really persevered, and his hard work paid off. The program at St. Paul's was very successful. He earned many accolades from the administration of St. Paul's and statewide education and art organizations in Minnesota. Through all of this, he became a world-renowned tuner and builder. And among education and academic circles, he was popular. This landed him a little stint on a short list as a tuner with the U.S. Navy Steel Band. He was further recognized with the Minnesota Black Musician of the Year Award in 1983 and 84. In 1980, Al O'Connor met Cliff as he was looking to buy instruments for the program at NIU. He knew Cliff's instruments were top quality. And in meeting the person himself, they became friends instantly. With this bond, Al knew for his program to build, he needed to get Cliff to relocate to DeKalb, where he would eventually be on his staff at NIU. It took him all of 5 years to convince Cliff to move to NIU to be on this faculty. And we could stand here and speak about Cliff all day, maybe all week, and still not say the same thing over and over. But Cliff, I could talk for me. Cliff has been a positive, mind-molding individual. He would always say, I don't give advice, I'll give you suggestions, And when you hear stories of Cliff, it's always about motivation. It's always about positiveness. It's always about Pan. And as he would normally say, the rest is history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Sion Gomez, Senior Lecturer at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And when Sion came up, I heard people saying, yes, because all of us know Sion with the hair all down to the waist. So it was a surprise. I was actually passing him to go and ask, is Sion here? But then the face is still there. So I recognized him. So thank you so much, Sion, for giving us all that information. And in the same way that Dr. Alexis was a mentor to you, I hope that you will be a mentor to your students at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So let his legacy live on through you. And now we have Miss Denise Hernandez. I met Denise when she was a teacher and then a principal and an avid pan player, and I love the term pan enthusiast. So I was very happy when she was elected to the executive of Pan Trinbago. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to invite the secretary of Pan Trinbago, Ms. Denise Hernandez, to tell us all about life at Pan Trinbago. This should be interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands together for Denise, life at Pan Trinbago.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Dr. Clifford Alexis, simple, humble, dedicated, yet powerful and extraordinary. The best kept secret in Pan. And as you have been listening to the persons before me, you'd realize he is the best kept secret in Pan. Because with the accolades we are hearing about him, the fact that it's not known to the world. And this memorial is part of our intention at Pan Trimbago to make this best kept secret known to the world and no longer be a secret through his legacy. Dr. Clifford Alexis came from the Clifton Hill Laventille community and was initially a member of Crusaders Steel Orchestra. Moving to the northwest of Trinidad, he joined Hit Paraders, which was just located a stone's throw from the legendary Invaders Spaniard. He then went to the Tripoli Steel Band and finally to Invaders. Cliff became a member of the National Steel Orchestra under the leadership of Mr. George Goddard, as Mr. Sullivan said previously. There were 44 young men in that steel orchestra, and they were there, as he said, because your band was supposed to recommend either your best tenor player or your best arranger. And when the tour came up in 1964, half of the band, 22 of them, became the first National Steel Band. We have a first National Steel Band, and then we had a second National Steel Band, and then we had almost a third National Steel Band. We now have a National Steel Symphony. So you see the progression of what is happening. He left Trinidad on Ash Wednesday in the mid-60s for the United States with approximately $5 in his pocket. Now, that's what I mean when I say powerful and extraordinary. Because I don't think today anybody in their right mind will leave this country with $5 in their pocket and go to the United States to survive. He met Patrick Arnold at Manhattan College in New York when he was associated with BWI Sunjets. During his stint at St. Paul's High School in Minnesota, he turned to Patrick, his longtime friend, to provide instruments for the band. He met Professor G. Allen O'Connor of Northern Illinois University, who informed him that he wanted to start a program at NIU. And because of the program he attended at the U.S. Navy Steel Orchestra and the fact that Cliff had made and tuned those bands, he was interested in having him come to NIU to do the program. A lasting friendship developed between these two gentlemen, and as Mr. Sullivan reiterated, he spent 5 years convincing Cliff to move from Minnesota to NIU. Taking up his stewardship at Northern Illinois University, he once again called on his longtime friend, Mr. Patrick Arnold, for instruments. Mr. Arnold then convinced Cliff that if you wanted drums, learn to make them yourself. And so began their friendship, where Patrick painstakingly taught Cliff how to make and tune steel pan. Becoming today, we would consider one of the leading global steel pan makers. Dr. Alexis, while going to purchase the drums for the manufacture of instruments from a Chicago steel plant, met the owner, Mr. Lester Triller. And immediately, a long-lasting friendship and relationship developed between them. With the assistance of physics professor Dr. Thomas Rossing, and using his keen and inquisitive mind, they performed groundbreaking research into the science of the steel pan, especially on metallurgy and acoustical quality. You see why we say it was a secret? This gentleman doing all of these things and nobody knew. But this is what, as Sion just said, became part of his lifelong challenge and what he wanted to impart. Cliff knew exactly what he wanted, the sound he wanted from a steel pan. Using his abilities and his dedication as a craftsman, he eventually realized that desired sound. His relationship with Mr. Triller allowed Cliff to perfect what he considered the best steel material for making the steel pans. It is this material that was sent to Pan Trimbago when the drum factory, known as Trinidad and Tobago Pan Instruments Limited, started at Macoya. It is this material created by Cliff that is used extensively in the production of the conventional double-sided drums for the manufacture of the frontline instruments. Dr. Alexis also forged relationships with musicologists from other universities and was able to provide Pan Trimbago with prominent foreign adjudicators for music festivals. He worked alongside Dr. Snyder of Akron University in Ohio in providing the first Pan Trimbago scholarship. This was awarded to Mr. Karen Valentine, who pursued that scholarship in international business and marketing. Dr. Alexis traveled extensively, not only as a performer par excellence, but also as an innovator and a musical arranger of this family of instruments we call the steel pan. He was responsible for the startup of many steel band programs, not only at universities in the United States, but also worldwide. In closing, on behalf of Pan Trimbago, the world governing body for Pan, I wish to honor Dr. Clifford Alexis as a Trinbagonian who went beyond the call of duty to assist nationals of Trinidad and Tobago with their tertiary education and truly deserves the highest accolades of our land. The legacy of this best-kept secret must now become known worldwide. We cannot thank him enough for what he has done for this, our blessed national instrument. Dr. Clifford Alexis, Pan Trimbago salutes you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Denise Hernandez, Secretary of Pan Trimbago. And thank you for the information, letting us know that not only was Dr. Clifford Alexis an intellectual, but he was also a visionary, an innovator, and he was a mentor. As we get ready now for some more entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, again we have our National Steel Symphony Orchestra, who will give us another of Dr. Alexis's compositions, and this one is Confusion Reggae. The name is so interesting, so we'll see what it is all about. Confusion Reggae, composed by Dr. Clifford Alexis. It will be played for us now by the National Steel Symphony Orchestra under the musical directorship of Mr. Aqua Leith. Ladies and gentlemen, steel pan music sweeter? Oh gosh, put your hands together once again for the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, Confusion Reggae. But if we think steel pan music is sweet, it is made sweeter because of the composition of the late Dr. Clifford Alexis, Confusion Reggae. There was nothing confusing about that. It was just sweetness right through. And as we continue now with our memorial for Dr. Clifford Alexis, the best kept secret in steel pan, I now invite a representative from the University of the West Indies, Mr. Satyanan Sharma, to bring us information, give us greetings from the University of the West Indies. Let's warmly welcome Mr. Sharma.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, family and friends of Dr. Clifford Alexis, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually going to talk about the early time in NIU, kind of according to the information I got from Clifford Alexis directly. I'd like to offer this as a memorial to Cliff Alexis by recounting the memories I have of him at Northern Illinois University, NIU, retracing the way my life had the privilege to intersect with his. It is a perspective that may provide you with an intimate insight into how pervasive and inspirational he was as a mentor to me, and so in turn, how he must have been to many others. I believe he was not only building instruments of steel, but a personal legacy through random and not so random acts of kindness, selflessness, and generosity, as he sought to educate all who were willing to receive the knowledge and share his passion as a pan man, an arranger, composer, a pan tuner, and as a music educator through the steel pan. My life began its intersection with his long before I actually met him. It was in 1987 when I was graduating with my bachelor's in music from Eastman School of Music, University of Rochester, New York, that my friend and mentor Harold Headley was also graduating with his undergraduate degree in music education from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. I was homesick and wanted to come home, but Harry had other plans. He wanted to continue to the master's program at NIU. It was through Harry that I first heard of the NIU program and Cliff Alexis and the determined Al O'Connor and the amazing Robert Chappell. If Harry was here in Trinidad now, he would have been the one delivering this address instead of me. In those days, there was no steel pan performance undergraduate program at NIU. It was some time after this that Cliff Alexis and Al O'Connor were able to collaboratively devise and have approved a bachelor's program in steel pan performance. I also became more aware about NIU and these venerable persons when Liam Teague was accepted by Al O'Connor to pursue the bachelor's program at NIU in 1993. 4 years earlier was the first time that Al O'Connor had heard Liam perform his winning rendition of Firebird in the school steel band festival. This was fortuitous because by then Al O'Connor and Cliff Alexis had been able to mount the undergraduate program for steel band performance. Many in this audience today would know of the history of Cliff's arrival to NIU that added to the momentum for the development of this oldest program in steel pan studies in the USA, and I dare say the world. Al was smitten with the sound of the steel pan while on vacation in the Caribbean and added it to the percussion instruments offered for study at NIU after he taught himself to play. I had not heard this story until I conducted a research paper on the origins of NIU steel band while at NIU. when I had eventually traveled to NIU in 2000 to pursue my master's program in music education. I remember the first time meeting Cliff Alexis in his office with his myriad post-it notes on the wall. I remember him so warmly and readily entertaining my family, my wife Karen, who is here today, and my daughter Aria, who was just 3 years old at the time. I soon learned that he always looked out for anyone coming from Trinidad and Tobago or any other Caribbean island and found ways to help one settle into the whole NIU environment. He saw it as part and parcel of his vocation to go out of his way to ensure that things were going okay and to buffer the challenging winter months by extending his hospitality. It was because of him that I visited the carnival celebrations at University of Chicago. It was because of him I visited a Trinbagonian basement party. And the list goes on. One event that was truly enlightening was when he carried me to the Triller Steel Factory, and I met Mr. Triller himself and learned firsthand of their bit of the story. It was through Cliff that Mr. Triller visited and heard the NIU Steel Band in concert and heard Liam Teague perform. It was through Cliff that Mr. Triller agreed to fund a teaching assistantship for steel band performance majors, which right away aided Liam Teague to complete his studies with no more financial hardship. I remember transcribing scores for him that would then be drilled in NIU steel band rehearsal. We would spend hours talking about the state of steel band and his long history. But I would still find out more things about him even this week as I prepared for this presentation. One thing I marveled about was his retelling of the hurdles he had to overcome to become a staff member at NIU. He had taken examinations to teach in the public school, and to become an instrument technician at NIU, he also had to obtain some sort of certification. But there was no such thing as a certification for a pan tuner. You see, when Al O'Connor began teaching the steel pan at NIU, he was faced with the challenge of keeping the pans in tune, just as Cliff had dealt with a similar challenge when he started to teach the steel pan in St. Paul's Central High School. These two indefatigable personalities came up with the same idea: learn to tune the pans themselves. However, Al O'Connor soon came to the realization that the demand to keep his instruments in shape was too demanding a task. When he heard the U.S. Navy Steel Band in 1973, he found out that Cliff was the one responsible for the well-tuned instruments. And then, after hiring him to tune the pans when needed and by arranging how to get the pans to him for a few years, Al decided to broach the possibility of having Cliff work full-time at NIU as a steel pan technician, but there was no such post. So the parallel found was the post for a piano tuner in a collegiate music program. This meant that Cliff had to study piano tuning and pass a test at the end of his studies to gain his substitute certification. Cliff was up to the task and worked hard to pass the tests and was then appointed as Instrument Repair Technician 1 in 1985 at NIU. But his job was more than just repairing and tuning the NIU instruments. He continued to tune for other individuals and institutions, and more importantly, also arranging, composing, directing, and teaching steel pan performance, as well as pan tuning. He became the co-director of the NIU Steel Band with Al O'Connor, and then with Liam Teague when Al retired in 2002. I had the privilege to be taught by Al O'Connor for 1 year, and then Liam Teague for 1 year in my stint at studying the steel band as a solo instrument at NIU from 2000 to 2002. I was lucky to come back to Trinidad to play for the NIU Steel Band at the World Music Festival in 2000, playing one of his compositions, Pan 2000, which you'll hear later today, and Robert Chappell's Wood and Steel. Cliff expanded my education about steel pan in general, and we discussed the state of pan and the direction of the steel band movement often. I remember, for instance, how he would speak with regard and gratitude about Patrick Arnold, who had encouraged him to learn to tune, and how he also shared firsthand with me and other students about his technique of building a steel pan. Even after I graduated from NIU, he took an interest in what I was doing. For instance, coming to hear me work with solo pan nights with my own composition, Paradise Lost, for a steel band festival. He would often call me and have long conversations on the phone and talk about some of the UE graduates who were continuing studies at NIU or catching up on what was going on in general. My whole experience was a true education about steel pan through the interaction not only with Al O'Connor and Liam Teague, but most of all, Cliff. My wife and I always fondly remember him and how he influenced me as a mentor and teacher and friend. My heart goes out to others whom he would have touched even more directly and for a much longer period of time, particularly his wife, family, and I cannot forget his close friend Liam Teague. I also wish to take this opportunity to remember Al O'Connor, who also recently passed. I am sure that the NIU community and everyone who was touched by these two great men will miss them greatly. Blessings to all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Satanand Sharma. And our next speaker, I remember, I always have to tell them, when I first met her, I could barely see her over the pan. And I said, what are you going to do? She says, I'm going to sing a calypso. So I said, what is the name of your calypso? Pan in Good Hands. And after she sang the calypso, she played the pan and went back and she sang. And then I said, that's a true reflection, because pan is definitely in good hands based on what I have seen here today. You were about, 8 or something like that? 7 or 8. And I am so happy to see where this young lady has reached and what she has achieved. And I congratulate Mom, Ingrid, and Dad, Mario, for the fantastic job. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear little adopted daughter, Dr. Mia Gormandy Benjamin.
Thank you so much for that introduction. President of Pantrinbego, Mrs. Beverly Ramsey Moore, the members of the executive, special guests, Cliff Alexis family, welcome. The National Steel Symphony Orchestra and Invaders, thank you for being here. I'd like to acknowledge all of you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to be here speaking about someone who meant so much to me and was so influential in my life. When this opportunity came up, I told myself, right, I'm going to have my speech prepared. I know what I'm going to talk about. And then when I sat behind my computer, all I could think about are the stories that Cliff used to tell me, or the relationship that he had with me and his students. And I'd like to share that with you this afternoon. When I first met Cliff at Northern Illinois University, I was just 16 years old, and it was my first time in DeKalb, Illinois. And my parents were preparing to leave me there so I could pursue a bachelor's degree in steel pan performance. And I heard Cliff say to my father, and we called him Cliff because I tried calling him Mr. Alexis a few times, and I get buff. Don't call me Mr. Alexis, call me Cliff. Right? So Cliff, when my parents were leaving, Cliff told my father, don't worry, I will take care of her. I'm the village Mako. And I remember hearing him saying that and thinking, wow, this person is really going to protect me. Because I didn't really know him very well at that time, but I felt a sense of comfort, knowing that he was going to pay attention. And here I thought I was special, where he paid attention to me. But he paid attention to all of his students. he made sure that it was his business to know what his students were about, what they were doing, to make sure that they were okay, especially the students who were international students. He made sure that we had rides to the airport. He made sure that we had food to eat. You know, just simple, everyday life. He was there, always ready to give advice and always ready to tell us a good story. Now, Cliff, we speak about Cliff this afternoon, and we know he was a fantastic builder and tuner, and we know he was a mentor and teacher. But I think one thing that's really important that we should mention is his personality. And his personality really is what made sure that NIU is where it is today and where the alum, where they are today as well. Now, Mr. Sharma spoke about this just a little bit with Mr. Triller and the relationship between Mr. Triller and Cliff. And I remember Cliff telling me this story. And he said one day in Chicago, he was actually putting pans in the back of a truck. And Mr. Triller was walking by, and Mr. Triller stopped and said, "What's that? What are you doing?" Now, it caught Mr. Triller's eye because Mr. Triller owned an oil drum company. So he wanted to know what are these drums that are going into this truck. So Cliff explained to him, it's a steel pan, please come to one of our concerts at NIU, and you will hear more. So Mr. Triller was definitely interested, and he attended one of the concerts at Northern Illinois University. And he was so blown away, he said, "Cliff, just tell me what you need, and I'll make sure it's ready." And Cliff said, "You see that little boy there, that young man who just played on that stage, he needs financial assistance to go to school." And Mr. Triller was so taken aback that Cliff wanted assistance for someone else. He didn't want assistance for himself. He didn't necessarily want anything that would benefit him, but he wanted financial assistance to benefit someone else. And that person was Liam Teague. And Mr. Triller was so impressed by that he trusted Cliff. And because of that relationship, many of us were able to attend Northern Illinois University. So it's very important to know that his personality as well as his relationships with people definitely set the tone for the success of students at Northern Illinois University. At NIU, everybody knew Cliff. I shouldn't just say at NIU, I should say in DeKalb, Illinois. Everybody in DeKalb, Illinois, which is where NIU is located, knew Cliff. Sometimes we'll go to his favorite restaurant called The Junction. "Hey, Cliff, how you doing?" Everybody knows Cliff. We went into a store to buy a mattress. "Hey, Cliff, how you going?" I'm like, man, everybody knows Cliff. And then everywhere we went, people just went out of their way to make sure that Cliff was okay, and that's because he went out of his way to make sure everybody else was okay. And that meant a whole lot to us as his students. In rehearsals, and NIU steel band rehearsals, Cliff would sit behind his iron, sometimes very quietly, and then all of a sudden, you will hear him say something out loud. "No, don't play that," or "play this." But when he said it, it wasn't necessarily a buff, because sometimes it came off that way, but it was more so an example of his passion for what he did and his passion for the music and how much he loved it and how much he loved how we expressed the music as well. Cliff received many awards. He received a Lifetime Award from the Percussive Arts Society. He also, of course, received a national award here at Trinidad and Tobago, the Chiconia Medal Silver. And he also received an honorary doctorate in Humane Letters from NIU. And he's the first panelist to receive an honorary doctorate from an institution outside of Trinidad and Tobago. If you dare call him Dr. Alexis, though, he will correct you and tell you, call me Cliff, right? And it just shows how humble he was and how much he just wanted to do what he loved. Because all the awards, even though those awards came, he was grateful, but he was just even happier knowing that his students were doing well and his music was there and we were doing everything in support of Cliff. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and Cliff will definitely live on throughout the world, especially here in Trinidad and Tobago, since at the University of Trinidad and Tobago we have Mr. Sion Gomez and myself. We both graduated from Northern Illinois University, and at the University of the West Indies we have Mr. Sat Sharma, Mr. Harold Headley, Dr. Janine Remy, all also graduating from NIU. So it just goes to show that our tertiary level education in steel pan has definitely been strongly influenced by Mr. Clifford Alexis, who decided to jump on a plane with $5 in his pocket. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Mia Gormandy Benjamin, Assistant Professor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And it just goes to show that for those of you who are teachers, how a teacher helps to mold and shape and influence your students. As I always said, you can either make or break your students. And in this case, we have seen that Cliff was one who made his students, who propped them up, who assisted them. And therefore, to all of you, please ensure that his legacy continues. What he did for you all, please do for your students, okay? And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a video presentation showing tributes from around the world.
He fought strongly for his students, and he was one of the most passionate people that I ever knew.
Hi everybody, I've been thinking long and hard about what to say about Cliff, and I think I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Thank you. I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm currently doing in my life as it pertains to music if it were not for Cliff. So miss you, buddy. Hope you're well, and go Yankees.
Cliff Alexis, a very thoughtful, caring, loving, and giving individual. To our very first meeting in DeKalb, Illinois, to our last meeting at the Junction in DeKalb, Illinois, when he again paid for the meal. Cliff Alexis, I love you, and the next meal is on me.
For me, my best memory of Cliff will always be his amazingly wonderful smile and laugh. Miss you, Cliff. Love you all. Bye.
Getting into Chicago in the middle of winter, and Cliff came to pick me up with his son. And I said, "Good night, Mr. Alexis. Nice to meet you." And he just looked at me and said, "Mm-hmm." And that was it. That was the conversation. Until we got back to campus, and then Cliff bought me dinner. He said dinner was on him, and he started opening up and speaking to me. And if you ever knew Cliff Alexis, you would know that that was the kind of person he was. He would gauge you at first, see what kind of person you are, and then he'll open up and you'll realize the teddy bear that Cliff Alexis was.
Hi, Elizabeth de la Mater at the International Music Camp right now, where students from all over the world come to play on Cliff's pans. He taught me honesty, integrity, live with an unabashed passion, and laugh at the nonsense.
Cliff Alexis was my best friend in the world, one of my greatest teachers, and a father figure. He was there for me during the most tumultuous and happiest times in my life, and consistently demonstrated the true meaning of love, not just by his words, but definitely through his actions.
The one thing that I do remember Cliff saying to me, you know where I got this mark on my head? I got beat with a pipe when I was a kid. And the students go, and you got to think, would you okay, would you okay the steel drum, love it so much that you're willing to take an evening in the jail or getting beaten in the head with a pipe? I don't know whether I would. I don't think so. But I didn't live that life. But to have that passion is something about Cliff that I don't find in many people.
Cliff Alexis embodied passion. Whether he was teaching or performing, happy or mad at you, he did it with intensity and with passion of someone who truly loved what he felt he was put on this earth to do.
Hi, Cliff, you are a wonderful teacher. I am grateful to be able to learn to him. It is my pleasure at the time that I spend with you and friends in NIU. Please keep watching us from now on. Thank you so much.
I feel blessed to have seen life through the eyes of Cliff Alexis. He was a lover of people and the steel pan instrument. He truly cared. His caring for me brought him from being a mere stranger into a father figure to whom I experienced unconditional, genuine love. A true icon. And my love for him will never fade. Thank you, Cliff Alexis.
I worked for Cliff for 2 years syncing pans. And I was always asking him questions about tuning and this and that. And one day he told me, I don't know if it's because I'm from the islands, but I don't like people who ask a lot of questions. So that was a lesson that I always remember.
Cliff and my dad were really good friends. And no matter where we spoke, either in his office or over the phone, he always had something to say about Birdie and his experience with him and the early steel band movement. And those are the things that I cherish the most about Cliff.
I have never been afraid of anyone like I was of Cliff. But that fear was not of him. It was a fear of letting him down. A man that lived so honestly, purely, and full of passion. Whether he was leaving you a voicemail that simply said, Cliff Alexis, talking about Pan, giving you a hard time, or telling you stories about his youth, he always made you feel like family and pushed you to be a better person.
Cliff Alexis, and one of my favorite memories was being able to stop by his office at 11 or 12 o'clock at night after finishing up a practice session to find him tuning Pan and striking up a long conversation with him about anything and everything from tuning to the history of the music to just life in general. Cliff would always ask me how I was doing and how school was going, and it meant so much.
Cliff Alexis is an amazing individual. A man so profound that his legacy and the knowledge that he shared will live on with us for years to come. I am deeply honored to have met him, a father figure to me.
When Cliff Alexis said he would be there for you, he was actually there. When my dad died in 2005, Cliff called me every day for a month just to check in and let me know there was still somebody in my life who cared for me. Love you, brother.
Cliff Alexis was a hardworking individual, very talented, kind, and also very generous with his time to his students.
At the end of a conversation with Cliff, he would say, take care of yourself, you know, I love you. But that's after half an hour of venting about something or telling me how much nonsense I was doing if he didn't agree with it. Thing is, it was just all love at the end of the day.
I think about Cliff Alexis, I think about passion, and a passion not only for music, but for education and for people. He built relationships, and I'm not here if we never meet, so passion.
He was funny, and this came through almost every day before or after class or rehearsal, as we would sit together on a table in the music building, listening to Cliff humorously share stories.
Cliff was one of my best friends for more than 35 years, and I miss Cliff every day. I'm here in my studio, and I put Cliff right where I can see him every single day. I miss his smile, I miss his hugs, and mostly I miss his love.
I met Cliff in 2002 at NIU, and he was loyal, honest, always there for me when I needed for personal or professional advice. And I know he will be missed by many.
There were so many good qualities about Cliff. Mainly, he cared so deeply about the people around him They were like his family.
Cliff was my husband, my partner, mentor, teacher. He was compassionate, had so much love. He was strong. He loved Pan. Pan was his life. He cared a lot about people and their future. I miss him and love him very much.
They were like his family.
Cliff was my husband, my partner, mentor, teacher. He was compassionate, had so much love. He was strong. He loved Pan. Pan was his life. He cared a lot about people and their future. I miss him and love him very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we sit here and we listen to the accolades that are being poured out, it's a pity that Dr. Clifford Alexis isn't here to hear how people feel about him. And this is a lesson to each and every one of us. Pantran Bego, I am sure that there are other icons who are alive and who need to hear how much they are appreciated. And therefore, I am saying to Pantran Bego, do not wait until they pass. Give them their flowers while they are alive and they can smell the roses and enjoy it. And to all of us here, please let the people you love and care about know that you do. Don't wait for a memorial. Don't wait for any sad occasion. Okay. We saw her. She was the very last person with the video presentation, but by no means was she last in his life. You know, we say at the side of every great man is a great woman. And Dr. Clifford Alexis was extremely fortunate to have at his side as his partner, Mrs. Yuko Asada Alexis. So now you will come and tell us if you can speak. You can speak? You sure? All right, bring the handkerchief. We will understand if the tears are flowing. But please come and give us your perspective as the wife of the late Dr. Clifford Alexis. Ladies and gentlemen, let's warmly welcome Mrs. Yuka Asada Alexis.
Thank you so much. On, March 31st would have been our 10th anniversary. We were married for 10 years and we were together for 15. And I remember when I would come to Trinidad with Cliff and people would look at us and people would be like, what? And I know some people would be really good at pretending like, everything is fine. But I know everybody was like, what is going on? And the obvious thing was our age difference and also nationality and race. We were so different. And people thought we were so different. But guess what? We had something, the same thing. We shared the love and the passion for the steel pan. That's how Cliff and I met. Because I wanted to learn so much more about the steel pan, I initially was introduced to steel pan building and tuning by Dr. Elie Manette, and I heard about NIU when NIU came here in 2000 for the World Music Steel Band Festival. And I actually came here in 2001, and I heard about NIU, and I contacted Cliff and the late Al O'Connor. Cliff always accepted me from the very beginning, even though I wasn't from Trinidad, or I was actually a piano major during my undergraduate. But it didn't matter. He welcomed everybody. Just like what Mia, Sion, other people were mentioning, his office door was always open. And he would welcome everybody and share what he knew. And even though he moved to the United States in 1964, he remained a Trini. he never turned into this Trini American. You saw Cliff, and he was a Trini. And how blessed were we as students from outside of Trinidad and Tobago to learn from somebody like Cliff Alexis. There are many steel bands in the United States and different parts of the world. We were so lucky to have learned from a true Trini who were so passionate about steel pan, and just like what I was mentioning in the video, he cared so much about young people and their future. But he really cared about young people, but he really cared about his country, Trinidad and Tobago, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the steel pan, the national instrument. He would get up every single morning at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., depending on summertime or not. And what he would do is to go to Newsday, read everything, go to Express and read everything, go to Guardian and read everything. And when I wake up, he'll be like, so this is what happened in Trinidad today. And I would be like, okay. And then he would bring me to Trinidad. And I have met so many amazingly talented, wonderful people here in Trinidad and Tobago, thanks to Cliff. And this is just one story, like my story. And there's so many, as you could see in that video, and that's just a portion of it. There's so many people who he touched throughout, from so many people from St. Paul Central High School. He taught many students who were struggling, who were underprivileged. And then he would tell me stories like a year ago or 2 years ago, whenever, and then he would say, you know what she's doing now? She's a lawyer. She's a doctor. She's this, he's that. There are so many students from NIU, like me. When I first went to NIU, I actually wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I loved Pan, but that was the only thing I knew. Then he taught me so much. So now I teach, I tune, I build, I write music, all thanks to Cliff. And I must acknowledge Al O'Connor and Liam Teague as well, because they have been doing, or Al was doing, and Liam currently is doing an amazing job to educate so many people from all over the world. So, I was thinking this morning, and just like Mia, I was thinking about what to say, and I just couldn't bring my thoughts together. And even when I was sitting down and trying to figure out exactly what I was going to say, my mind would just get really confused. So I'm just saying whatever's on my mind right now. But there's something that I realized this morning. The two ensembles that are creating beautiful music, sharing with us today, the NSSO and the Invaders. Well, Cliff was in the National Steel Band. That gave him so much opportunities. National Steel Band opened the door for him. When I first came to Trinidad in 2001, guess which band I played with? The Invaders. That trip changed my life. Coming to Trinidad, hearing and playing with Trinidadians is like an experience that you can't experience anywhere else in the entire world. I love NIU, but there's nothing like coming to Trinidad and hearing the steel bands play here. How you guys make me feel, how you guys make so many people feel is just so incredible. It's so special. So I just want to say that I'm really thankful for everybody who organized this memorial for Cliff, also for us family members. We really, really appreciate everything that you've done for Cliff and for ourselves. But I also want to thank people of Trinidad and Tobago for creating the beautiful and powerful instrument that change people's lives. Trinidad and Tobago, but it's specifically Trinidadians, you don't know how special Trinbagonians, see, I don't forget about Tobagonians. I've been corrected before. You are very special. You have something so special that sometimes when you're here, you may not get that recognition. And, sometimes some people may not value what you have, but we recognize it. And I'm so thankful for what you have developed, what you continue to share with us, how you've made my life so much better. And I just can't thank enough. And I'm just, you guys treat me like family, even though, evidently I'm not from here. But through Pan, you welcome me to be in Invaders, other steel bands, to work together and create something powerful and beautiful. And I was supposed to talk about legacy, so, I do hope that I will continue to carry on Cliff's legacy through what I do. And, it is one of my missions to continue to work hard in keeping his music and keeping his sound. Talking about Cliff, because I don't want people to forget about Cliff. Maybe I'll just write something about Cliff on Facebook or something. So just so somebody will see, a young person may see, okay, who's this Cliff Alexis person? May become curious of him. But just want to thank you so much for everything, all your support and love. And let's just keep going and create more music. And thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Yuko Asada Alexis. And I hope you recognize that by now you are an honorary Trinbagonian. Okay? So thank you for all that you have done for Dr. Clifford Alexis, because we are all the beneficiaries of his legacy. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to acknowledge in our midst our own Pan icon, Dr. Anthony Williams. In 1951, he went with TASPO, the Trinidad All-Steel Percussion Orchestra. He is an innovator. He put wheels on the pans. He has won the music festival. He has won Panorama. Please, Pan Trinbago, again, please honor Dr. Anthony Williams while he's here with us. So welcome, Dr. Anthony Williams, and thank you for all that you have done for our beautiful national instrument. Thank you so much, and we wish you continued good health and God's blessings. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is always so important to say thank you. So we will now have some closing remarks from our young Education Officer of Pan Trinbago, Mr. Marcus Ash.
Family, friends, well-wishers, specially invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to stand here and give these closing remarks here today, as I would have listened to all these stories, and I too would have my own. I mean, many people know my face aligned with Silver Star Seal Orchestra, and if it wasn't for Cliff Alexis, we wouldn't have had an arranger today in the form of Liam Teague. So even Cliff would have been influential in Liam being there. And with Liam being in Silver Stars, I mean, last year I had one of my players leave to go and do the Masters at NIU. Tomorrow, I have one player, Malik Brooks, who will be leaving to go to the NIU. I already know which player will be leaving next year to go to NIU. And I have about the next 5 years lined up for NIU. All thanks to what Cliff would have done by sending Liam Teague to us. And as I remember Cliff as well, I would also remember these stories whenever he came to Silver Stars every year for Carnival to support Liam, rightfully so. And he'd give these stories when he heard that I was a member of the NSSO, he would give the story of him being there. And the way he would describe it, I didn't hear it mentioned today, but in a funny way, some people think obscene language is always a bad thing. In Cliff's case, I would call it a sentence enhancer. I think the C in Cliff stands for cuss. And it was dynamic. It was musical. It was really, it was music to my ears, and my name is Marcus. So, I mean. But in closing today, I need to thank a couple of people here. Let me start with the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, the Minister, Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly, the Division of Culture for giving us the very talented group that I was once a member of and will always be a member of the National Steel Symphony Orchestra. I'd like to thank the Invaders Steel Orchestra. Desiree, I am not seeing you, but as captain, okay, there you are. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank my colleagues, the president and the executive in Pantrinbago. This was an event long in planning. And when I mention Pantrinbago, I must mention Miss Angela Fox. There were some cold days when I walked in and the air conditioner was very cold, and Angela Fox is perspiring in there, making sure that every detail goes into this event. To the planning committee, I must recognize the team from the UTT who would have worked on this, Dr. Mia Gormandy Benjamin, my sister-in-law. Mr. Sion Gomez. That was a heart attack in the making there today. Don't do that. Give a warning. Akualit, who would have been planning, Mr. Nandez, Keith Simpson, they worked tirelessly. While I would have been out of the country, they would have been still doing their things. So we have to recognize them. To everyone who was here, we thank you all for being here today. You have been a wonderful audience. Again, on behalf of my colleagues and I at Pantrinbago, we thank each and every one of you for coming here today. Do enjoy the rest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marcus Ash, Education Officer, Pantrinbago. Marcus, I don't know if your mom would appreciate the way you dissected your name. You know, your name is Mark. I don't know if it's M-A-R-K. All right, but your mom gave you a very nice name, Marcus Ash. And ladies and gentlemen, just to add to what Marcus said, we want to thank Pantrinbago Incorporated, the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, the National Symphony Steel Orchestra, Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra, Mrs. Yuko Asada Alexis, CATS. All of us who are involved in PAN, we know that CATS from UTT Technical, CATS, thank you very much, and members of the media. We say thank you very much for your support of this event by Pantrinbago. And as we continue to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Clifford Alexis, we will now be entertained by the National Steel Symphony Orchestra with another of his compositions, Pan 2000. Ladies and gentlemen, please show your love for our National Symphony Steel Orchestra, Pan 2000. And it has been a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, having all of you all here. We ask you to please remain seated whilst our specially invited guests will be ushered out. And after this, ladies and gentlemen, you are all invited to join us in the lobby for refreshments and entertainment. Thank you very much for being here with us this afternoon. We hope that you enjoyed this memorial for the late Dr. Clifford Alexis. Thank you very much. I'm Gemma Jordan, and it has been a privilege being your MC this afternoon. So please remain seated while our specially invited guests are ushered out.